Well, hello 3C. How are you today? Welcome to your first lesson. I must say you're looking well. What a swell group of people I have in front of me this semester. Um, anyway, we are going to start with something just to ease you into grade 11 math. We're going to review solving ratios. Now, solving ratios is not a new skill. You did it back in elementary school. You did it in grade 9. You did it in grade 10. We're going to perfect it now that you're in grade 11 because I know how smart you guys are. So we're going to be reviewing solving ratios, and the reason we're going to do that, look at our goal, it says to review skills necessary to solve problems with trigonometry. Now trigonometry is not new either, but we are going to take it a little farther than we did last year. So solving ratios, there are three ways that you can use to successfully solve ratios. They will work in all situations, but some may be easier at times. Now if you're more comfortable with it one way, there's no reason why you can't use that all the time. So I'm going to go over three different methods and you pick which one you like. Now, comparison is the one that you probably looked at first, especially if you had me before you looked at it first. So here's comparison. Whoop, that went a little too high. Let's pull that back down so you can see the title. Comparison. Oh no, stop, stop, stop. Okay, there we go. Here's the idea. We're going to compare two given numbers in a ratio and decide what you need to multiply or divide by to go from one to another. And then you use the same number to multiply or divide to get the unknown. So here we go. Here's my ratio. Notice I've got two. I've got one that's actually really nice and one that's a little yucky. We're going to look at the nice one first. So in the nice one, what we have to do is decide how we're going to solve for x. So here's what we have to do. We either have to turn 55 into x, or we have to turn 30 into x. Now, to know which one we want to do, we're going to look at the other ones. If I'm going to turn 55 into x, look, I got to put another arrow on the top and turn 10 into 30. So if I decide I'm going to turn 55 into x, I have to know what I did to turn 10 into 30. That's actually kind of easy. To turn 10 into 30, I multiplied by 3. So that's pretty easy, okay? Especially if you know your times tables. And if you don't know your times tables, all you'd have to do to figure out what you did to get 10 to 30 would be go 30 divided by 10. And it would tell you, oh, you multiplied by 3. Okay. Now, going the other direction, if I want to turn 30 into x, I got to do the arrow the same direction on the other side, and I have to know how to turn 10 into 55. Well, to turn 10 into 55 isn't quite as simple. We still have to multiply, and we're going to multiply by 5.5 or 5.5. So I would actually prefer to go the route where I multiply by 3. That's a little bit easier to me. So I'm just going to erase these ones going down the side, and I'm going to turn 55 into x by doing the same thing that I did up top. And what I did up top was I multiplied by 3. So in order to figure out what x is, I have to do 55 times 3. Can you do that in your head? 50 times 3 is 150, and 5 times 3 is 15, so putting that together we get 165. So, not too difficult. Now if we had decided to turn 10 into 55 and turn 30 into x, we would have gotten the same answer. It just wouldn't have been quite as easy on the times tables. So now let's have a look at the one that I told you was a little bit yucky. And it's still a little bit yucky. It's yucky because it's not our straight up multiplication tables. So what I have to do is I have to turn something into x. And the way that I did it before, again, okay, I gotta turn something into x. I either have to turn 12 into x, or I have to turn 22 into x. So now I have to make that decision. How do I change 12 into x? Well, if I want to change 12 into x, I have to know how to change 15 into 22. 15 into 22, I'm going to have to multiply by something. It's going to have to be bigger than 1 but less than 2, because 15 times 2 is 30. So it's going to be a decimal number. Let's look the other direction, see if that's going to be good. If I want to turn 22 into x, I have to go the same over here. I have to figure out how I turned 15 into 12. Now again, 15 into 12, I got to multiply by something. And that something is actually going to have to be smaller than 12. Smaller than 15, because 12 is smaller than 1, Geez, I'm getting all confuddled here. It has to be smaller than 1 because 15 is bigger than 12, so it has to be smaller than 1. Let's go with the first method that I did. And this is all stuff that you can do in your head, and it doesn't matter which one you choose. They're all going to get you there. But again, this is kind of yucky. How do I turn 15 into 22? If I want to change 12 into x, I have to know how I change 15 into 22. Well, I don't know that off the top of my head. I have to figure out what I'm going to multiply by here. So I have to figure out what I'm going to multiply by. What I do is I take what I'm trying to get and divide it by what I started with. And that tells me what my multiplication is. So 22 divided by 15, if you have to pull out your calculator, you just type in the 20, oh, that's not a 2, clear, 22 divided by 15 equals. And that tells me it has to be 1.466666 repeated. Now, that's yucky. I'm going to round it to 1.467. 1.467 just to leave a few decimal places. And so in order to figure out x here, I say x is going to equal 15 times, or sorry, not 15, 12 is what I start with. I got to multiply it by the same thing, so I have to multiply by 1.467. So x is going to be 12 times 1.467. So on the calculator, and actually I didn't delete this on my calculator. I never hit delete until I start to do something else that I need, because I might need that number later. So 1.467, I'm going to multiply that by 12. And it tells me it's 17.6. So 17.6. Now if you actually type this in, you might not get exactly the same answer as me, because when I left all those digits on the calculator, it makes it slightly more accurate. Okay, so that's our value for x in this question. Now there's two more questions that I'm going to do, or two more types of solving that I'm going to do with you. The next one is called isolation. I'm going to just extend the page a little bit here. So for isolation, I'm going to solve the same one I did up here. So we're going to hope we get 17.6 because I'm solving the same question up here. So 17.6 is what we're looking for. So here's isolation. Isolation says I want to get x by itself. And so I have to look on this side of the equal sign and see what is stopping x from being by itself. Well, the only other thing with x on this side is 22, and that 22 is dividing the x. So to get rid of that 22, we have to do the opposite of what it's doing. It's dividing x, so we're going to multiply by 22. So I'm going to put brackets around this side, and I'm going to say multiply by 22. Now when I multiply by 22, dividing and multiplying cancel each other out, so it just goes away, and all I'm left with on this side is x. But you guys know, because you studied algebra, that whatever you do to one side, you do exactly the same thing to the other. So on this side, I have to multiply by 22. And you can put a times in there if it makes you feel better. Times 22. Now how do I type this into my calculator? Well, there's two ways. You can either do 12 times 22, get your answer, and then divide by 15. Or you can go 12 divided by 15, get your answer, and then times it by 22. Doesn't really matter one way or the other. Let's pull up my calculator. I usually like the first way. I usually go 12 times 22 divided by 15. I work top to bottom. So that's the way I'm going to plug it in. And remember, we're hoping we're going to get the 17.6. 12 times 22 divided by 15 equals, look at that, 17.6 exactly. And the one nice thing about isolation here is that we're not working with decimals in our intermediate step, which is what we did up here. When we changed this into the 1.467, we were working with decimals. And when you round a decimal, then you get round off errors. Down here, we didn't round any decimals, so this is exactly 17.6. Up here, we weren't quite sure because there was a few more decimals after on the calculator, but this is actually exactly 17.6. And you could have typed it in this way. This is an alternate way to put in your calculator. Okay, so we're going to go over one more time. Right now we're almost at the 10-minute mark. I was hoping to keep it under 10 minutes for your first video, but unfortunately we haven't got there. So, cross multiplication. Now, cross multiplication works every time. And we've talked about cross multiplication before. Cross multiplication is a property of equal equation or equal ratios. So if we're told we have an equal ratio like I do here, I know that when I cross 22 times 12, and I'm going to write that down here, 22 times 12, when I go kitty cross the equal sign, I will get exactly the same thing as if I do x times 15. And x times 15 is 15x. So now this is just an algebra question. I have to multiply the 22 times 12. So I'm going to do that. 22 times 12 on my calculator is 264. 264. And that equals 15x. Now remember, we're isolating x after that. This is kind of isolation too, although there's a couple more steps to it. So to get the x by itself, this 15 is stopping it. And when I say by itself, I mean on this side of the equal sign. There's two sides of the equal sign. On this side of the equal sign, I got x and I got a 15. I want just an x, so I got to get rid of that 15. So here's how I'm going to get rid of the 15. It's multiplying the x. I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to divide. So on both sides, we divide by 15. Now on this side, the 15s are going to go away, and that's going to leave me with just a plain old x. Let me get my green marker back here again. Just a plain old x, and over here 264 divided by 15. I'm going to pull my calculator up just to make sure. Oh, look, we've got that 264 still there. Luckily I didn't hit clear. And I'm going to go divided by 15. And that's 17.6. Just so that you know you don't trust my mental math sometimes. We saw the calculator do it. So what we did here was we multiplied these two numbers and got this, and then I'm going to get a different color. I multiplied these two things and it gave me this, and I put an equal sign in between it. This is important. Don't just write those down. Put the equal sign between them. It means that this number is equal to 15 times whatever x is. And so we figured that out, that x is 17.6. So good luck with your homework questions. Not homework questions, because I want you to do them in class where I can see you working on them.